My girlfriend ditched me for a party with her friends. I cut her out of my life. Now she's at my door crying. Her voice had faded from my memory, but there she was, suddenly at my doorstep, sobbing and begging for forgiveness. The worst part? I felt absolutely nothing. And to top it off, she showed up at the most inconvenient moment of my life. Let me introduce myself. I'm Tyler, and this experience completely transformed my world. 2.5 years ago, I was deeply in love with someone I thought I'd spend my life with. I gave her my dedication, my loyalty, my everything. But in a single evening, my perspective on what we had crumbled entirely. That night wasn't a bolt from the blue. It was the final straw in a glass that had been slowly filling for months, maybe years, with indifference and priorities that didn't include me. Looking back, I see the pattern clearly now. Her friends always came first. Our plans were the first to be canceled if something more exciting came up with them. My efforts to create special moments were often sidelined, dismissed as if my time and feelings were infinitely flexible, able to stretch to accommodate her whims. I remember romantic dinners postponed because a friend was upset and needed to go out. Weekend plans I'd made with enthusiasm scrapped at the last minute because of a surprise party she couldn't miss. Each time, I swallowed my disappointment, put on a brave face, and convinced myself that loving her meant being understanding, that supporting her meant not standing in the way of her social life. But inside, every cancellation, every last-minute change, every moment I felt like a backup plan left a small scar, a growing well of exhaustion and doubt about where I stood on her list of priorities. Back then, I believed that if you valued someone and cared for them, they'd return the same. But reality has a way of teaching you otherwise. The woman I loved, Camila, made a choice that revealed my true worth in her world, and it wasn't what I thought. So, come along to the end of this story because you'll understand exactly why some people don't deserve a second chance. I've always been introverted, someone who values meaningful connections. Camila was the opposite. She had a charisma that lit up any room, and people gravitated toward her effortlessly. I loved that about her. I was fascinated by our differences, believing we complemented each other perfectly. She was the spark and I was the steady flame that never went out. I had multiple opportunities to leave my hometown, amazing job offers that could have transformed my life in unimaginable ways. But I stayed for her because I was in love and convinced we were building something lasting. I pictured a future with her, our own home, maybe a family down the line. My commitment was total and I honestly thought hers was too. How wrong I was. That reality hit me hard during an evening that should have been memorable for all the right reasons. It was Camila's birthday, our anniversary as a couple, and the moment I'd chosen to propose. Aware of the pattern of disregard I'd been carrying but desperate to believe this time would be different, I invited her a week in advance with extra care. I remember taking her hands in mine, looking into her eyes with a seriousness that wasn't typical for me. "Camila," I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the nerves fluttering in my stomach, "next Friday for your birthday and our anniversary, I have something really special planned. A dinner at that new place you love. But it's not just any dinner, okay? It's really important to me, to us. I need you to be there with me, just the two of us, no distractions, no friends. Promise me you won't bail." She looked at me, her face lighting up with a radiant smile. "Of course, Tyler, how could I miss it?" Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. She even leaned in for a quick kiss. "A plan just for us. Sounds perfect. I'm so excited. Don't worry, it's locked in my calendar. It'll be our special night." Her promise, delivered with such lightness and joy, fed a fragile hope in me. Maybe, just maybe, I'd finally gotten through to her, made her understand what this meant to me. That this night was the test. I had everything ready. A table at an amazing restaurant, an intimate setting, words I'd rehearsed countless times in my head. I imagined her face lighting up, maybe shedding a few tears as I slipped the ring on her finger. The nerves were eating me alive, but the excitement was stronger. That moment would be unforgettable for both of us. But at the last minute, she chose to ditch our intimate evening for a wild party with her friends. There was no discussion, no real apology. Just a casual, "I'll make it up to you. We can go out to dinner another time." That phrase, "another time," hit me with a bitter familiarity. It was the same empty currency she'd used countless times to buy my patience. But this time the blow was devastating. It wasn't just our anniversary, her birthday, or my future in a ring. It was her trampling on that enthusiastic promise that, "Of course, Tyler," and that, "It'll be our special night," I'd naively taken as a sign of change. The weight of all the times I'd been sidelined, all the scars of being the backup plan, crashed down on me like an avalanche. It wasn't just sadness anymore. It was the brutal confirmation of a pattern my love-blinded eyes had refused to see, and a soul-deep exhaustion that left me hollow. The final straw didn't just overflow the glass, it shattered it into 1,000 pieces. When I reached out, still hoping she'd reconsider, she made me feel like I was overreacting. "You're making too big a deal out of this. It's just dinner." But it was so much more than that. She had no idea what she was rejecting. She didn't know I was carrying a ring ready to give her my entire life. And in that moment, something inside me broke. That night, I lay in bed trying to process how the person I loved most could make me feel so invisible. I'd given her everything, and she chose a night out with friends over me. But it wasn't just about that night. My mind replayed, like an endless loop, all the times before. The time she forgot our first anniversary because she was on a trip with friends, the countless calls she didn't answer when she was out with them, the time she showed up late to our dates because she lost track of time chatting, how my professional achievements were barely acknowledged while her friends' gossip was endless conversation fodder. Above all, that conversation from the week before echoed cruelly, my solemn plea, her radiant smile, her enthusiastic promise of a special night just for us. Now, it was nothing more than another blatant lie in a long list of dismissals. Each memory was a nail in the coffin of our relationship, the final confirmation that I was never, ever her priority, just a convenient accessory useful when the fun with others ran dry. The emotional exhaustion of years of fighting for a place she never gave me became an unbearable weight on my chest. That night's decision wasn't an isolated mistake. It was the most blatant and final expression of a pattern I'd refused to see out of love. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was done. Empty. Finished. When I woke up the next day, I felt a crushing heaviness inside. I'd fallen asleep in tears the night before, still clinging to a foolish hope that Camila would realize her mistake and try to fix it. Maybe she'd call, text, anything. But hours passed. Silence. I checked my phone repeatedly. By evening, it was clear. If she cared, she would have reached out. If she felt even a shred of guilt, she would have tried to contact me. But she didn't. And that silence told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to wait around for someone who clearly didn't value me. That's when I decided it was over. I grabbed my phone, found her contact, and deleted it. Then I blocked her on every platform: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything. I erased every photo, every chat, every trace of her from my life. If I wasn't her priority, she wouldn't have a way to reach me. I left no door open for her to waltz back in when it suited her. Without Camila in my world, I faced another reality. There was no reason to stay in that city. I turned down job offers before because I didn't want to leave her. But now, staying felt like wasting my life. I wasn't going to wait for another chance to come along. I decided to move. Opportunities would come once I got there. I wasn't going to let life just pass me by anymore. From now on, I was in control of my destiny. That same night, I talked to my parents and laid out the whole story. I told them about my plan to propose, how I'd spent weeks envisioning our life together, and how she threw it all away for a night of partying. With a voice breaking from suppressed anger, I recounted all the times before, the slow erosion of being the backup option, the exhaustion of begging for a place I was never given. I told them about the ring in my pocket, a symbol of a future she tossed aside without even knowing, for another night of drinks and empty laughter. Saying it all out loud made the magnitude of her final action, and my decision, sink in for them and for me. My mom was heartbroken for me. My dad stayed quiet, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes, not in me but in how Camila had treated me. They supported my choice to leave. They understood my need to start over. When they asked where I was going, I was vague. I didn't want Camila showing up later with some excuse, trying to convince me to come back. I needed a clean break. The next day, I packed my things and left that home without looking back. I reached out to a high school friend, Javier, who'd moved to a big city a few years earlier. We hadn't talked much, but when I told him my situation, his response was immediate. "My place is open to you for as long as you need." And just like that, I had a destination. When I got there, I barely mentioned what happened. Javier could tell I was carrying something heavy, but he was kind enough not to pry. I was deeply grateful for that. The last thing I wanted was to relive it. My only goal was to bury myself in work until I forgot everything. And that's exactly what I did. I took every job I could find, day shifts, night shifts, anything to keep me busy. I wasn't picky. I worked in warehouses, did deliveries, and even picked up freelance IT projects when they came up. My body was exhausted, but my mind was so numb it didn't matter. I banned myself from social media, from thinking about what Camila was doing, or even saying her name in my head. Romance? Out of the question. I had no interest in love, dating, or anything involving emotions. My only priority was myself, making money, securing my future, and becoming someone no one would ever abandon again. I've always been good with money, but I took it to another level. Every dollar I earned went into two categories: personal investment and stock market investment. I educated myself obsessively on finance, watching videos, devouring books, analyzing strategies to grow my money. Slowly I started seeing progress. After a few months, I got my own place. It wasn't fancy, just a modest apartment, but it was mine. No more sleeping on someone else's couch. 2 years flew by. The pain that once consumed me had lost its grip. Reflecting on it, I realized Camila, without knowing it, did me a favor. If she hadn't ditched me that night, I might never have found the path to the life I deserved. One day, while at the mall, I never expected to run into someone from my past, let alone someone connected to Camila. I was just there to shop. But as I turned near the food court, I saw a familiar face. At first, I couldn't place her, but then it clicked. Sophia, one of Camila's old friends. My initial reaction was to hesitate. The last time I heard her name, Camila had accused her of trying to flirt with me. Back then, I trusted Camila completely, so I bought her story and thought Sophia was trouble for supposedly interfering in our relationship. But seeing her now, she didn't seem malicious at all. She came across as warm, and from her reaction to seeing me, it was clear she held no grudges. She smiled, a bit surprised, and said, "Wow, Tyler, I never expected to run into you here." I nodded, still processing the encounter. "Yeah, it's been a while." We stood there for a moment, unsure how to proceed. We'd never really talked before, Camila made sure of that. But after an awkward pause, Sophia broke the silence, suggesting we grab a coffee to catch up. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? At best, I might learn something I'd never considered. We sat down at a mall cafe, and that's when I learned the truth. Sophia was blunt, no sugarcoating. "I always thought Camila didn't appreciate you the way you deserved. That's why I ended our friendship." That threw me off. It was the complete opposite of Camila's version. When I asked her to explain, Sophia laid it all out. She'd confronted Camila about how she treated me, her selfishness in the relationship, and her apparent disregard for my time and feelings. But instead of reflecting, Camila turned it around, accusing Sophia of trying to seduce me. That lie spread through their social circle before Sophia could defend herself, and Camila had already rallied everyone to her side. As Sophia kept talking, more pieces fell into place. The whole situation became clear. Camila had manipulated me, playing the victim and convincing me Sophia was the villain. And like a fool, I'd bought it without question. For so long, I'd convinced myself I understood Camila, that I knew her true self. But sitting there listening to Sophia, I realized how much I'd accepted Camila's fabricated reality. It wasn't just about that anniversary night, it was a pattern. Camila had a knack for playing innocent while tearing others down. And the worst part? I'd been complicit in it without realizing. I shared the whole story with Sophia. My plan to propose, how Camila shattered everything, my decision to leave and start over. She listened without interrupting, nodding with genuine interest. It was liberating to finally say it all out loud, especially to someone who knew exactly what kind of person Camila was. For the first time in years, I didn't feel naive for falling for her lies. I just felt relief. After that meeting, Sophia and I stayed in touch. Talking to her felt natural, maybe because she'd also been hurt by Camila, or maybe because she had no expectations of me. We started hanging out regularly, grabbing lunch, going to movies, just enjoying each other's company. I was cautious at first. The idea of starting something new, of trusting again, made me uneasy. But Sophia never pushed, never asked for more than I could give. And because of that, I was able to relax for the first time in a long time. One Sunday afternoon, I just finished tidying my apartment, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Sophia had texted earlier, saying she was coming over with something she'd cooked. The thought made me smile. She'd gotten into the habit of bringing me homemade dishes, and I genuinely appreciated it. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. So when the intercom buzzed, I assumed it was her. Without thinking, I went to open the door, expecting Sophia's warm smile and a container of food. But it wasn't Sophia. It was Camila. For a moment, my brain refused to process it. She looked the same. She stood there, hesitant, nervous. My first instinct wasn't to greet her or tell her to leave. I just stared and asked, "How did you find me?" She tried to speak like she was gearing up to explain, but I cut her off. I had no interest in hearing whatever story she'd concocted. I shook my head and said, "Leave." Just like that. There was no reason for her to be there, and I needed her gone. Camila broke down right in front of me, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. Clutching her chest like the pain was physical, she begged for forgiveness, admitting she'd treated me terribly and taken me for granted. She said she never should have let me go, that she was completely lost without me, that her life had fallen apart after I left. She looked at me with red, tear-filled eyes, searching for some hint of mercy in my expression. But I felt nothing. I stood there watching her cry, and all I felt was overwhelming apathy. I'd imagined this moment countless times, rehearsing what I'd say if she came back. But now that it was happening, I had no words. I was about to tell her to leave again when I heard footsteps approaching. We both turned. It was Sophia. She was coming up the stairs, carrying a container of homemade food, her genuine, effortless smile lighting up her face. She radiated warmth, a stark contrast to the emotional chaos in front of me. The air around Camila seemed to evaporate. Her swollen eyes widened, like her mind couldn't process the scene. Sophia sized up the situation in an instant. My rigid stance, Camila's distress, the palpable tension. Without hesitation, she closed the distance between us. Her smile softened into a quiet look of solidarity, and before I could say anything, she leaned in and kissed me softly on the cheek. "Perfect timing, huh?" she said, her eyes meeting mine with a calm that countered the chaos. It was a protective gesture, a silent affirmation of where she stood. "So glad you're here," I replied, wrapping her in a hug that was both gratitude and confirmation. Her presence was the perfect antidote to that toxicity. Camila stumbled back, her face a mix of pain and shame. Sophia didn't glance at her for a second. Her focus stayed on me, an unwavering loyalty. Without another word, I took Sophia's hand and we walked into the apartment. I locked the door behind us. I didn't check to see if Camila was still outside. I didn't wait to hear her footsteps leaving. It was done. She made her choice 2 years ago. Now it was my turn. You know what? Looking back, I realized pain can be a great teacher. When Camila chose that party over me, I thought my world had collapsed. I questioned everything, whether I'd been too clingy, too demanding, or just not enough for her. But the truth is, I was never the problem. She simply didn't value me the way I valued her. That night, lying in bed with a heavy chest, I had no idea that the best decision of my life was right in front of me. Moving on was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also my salvation. And it's funny how fate balances things out, isn't it? After I moved, I focused on myself. I worked hard, invested smartly, and built a life I'm proud of. Meanwhile, I learned Camila jumped into another relationship almost immediately. And not just any relationship, she chose someone who fit her lifestyle perfectly. A partier. Someone who lived for instant gratification just like her. At first, it probably seemed like she had it all. Fun, adrenaline, the thrill of someone who kept the party going. But then reality hit. That guy wasn't just a partier. He had serious issues. His habits weren't healthy and they brought out the worst in him. Their relationship was toxic. Constant problems, endless drama, a complete disaster. Eventually, it collapsed. And when there was nothing left, that's when she showed up at my door, crying and begging. But by then it was too late. I'd moved on. I'd grown. And most importantly, I'd learned a fundamental lesson. Real love doesn't require forcing. When someone wants to be in your life, they show it with actions. They don't make you a second choice. They don't make you compete for their attention.